I cared for your mother when no one else would. Now I know why you never came." Claire's words hung in the air like shattered glass. The billionaire went pale. His mother wept. And the truth that would destroy a multi-million-dollar conspiracy was about to spill across a cracked vinyl booth in Brooklyn. If you want to see how a waitress, a forgotten mother, and a guilty son tore down an empire of lies, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. This is their story. The coffee was burning. Claire Dawson could smell it from 3 tables away, that acrid edge cutting through the usual diner smells of hash browns and industrial-strength cleaner. She moved fast, weaving between a businessman who'd been nursing the same cup for an hour and a teenager scrolling through her phone with dead eyes. The pot hissed when she pulled it off the burner. "Shit," she muttered, dumping it in the sink. "Language, Claire." That was Donnie, the cook, not even looking up from the griddle. "No one heard me." "I heard you." She didn't answer, just started a fresh pot and went back to her section with the kind of smile that didn't reach anywhere near her eyes. Table 4 needed more cream. Table 6 was ready to order. Table 2 had been trying to get her attention for 5 minutes, waving a 20 like it was a signal flare. It was 2:47 on a Tuesday afternoon in March, and the Bluebird Diner was running on fumes and spite. The vinyl booths were cracked. The linoleum had worn through in places down to the concrete beneath. The neon sign outside had been missing the R in Bluebird since before Claire started working there, which made it the Bluebird Diner to anyone driving past on Flatbush Avenue. She'd been there 4 years, 4 years of double shifts and sore feet, and men who thought a $5 tip bought them the right to comment on her legs. 4 years of pretending she didn't see the disappointment in her reflection every time she caught it in the stainless steel napkin dispenser. 4 years of being 30 years old and feeling 50. "Sweetheart, can we get some service over here?" Table 2. The guy with the 20. He had a voice like gravel in a blender. "Be right with you." She grabbed her pad and pen, fixed her smile, went over. "What can I get you?" He ordered a patty melt. Extra onions. Fries instead of coleslaw. Coffee, black. His friend wanted the same, but with a Coke. They both looked at her a beat too long when she wrote it down. "That it?" "That's it, sweetheart." She took the order to Donnie, clipped it up, turned back to the floor, and nearly collided with Marcus, the other server on shift. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah, fine. You look tired." "I'm tired." Marcus had been there longer than she had. He was 53, had 3 kids, and moved through the diner like he was underwater. Slow and deliberate. Nothing rattled him. Claire had seen him get screamed at by a customer who found a hair in her soup, and he just nodded, apologized, brought her a new bowl. No anger, no reaction. She didn't know how he did it. The door chimed. 2 more customers, college kids, probably from Pratt. They took a booth by the window and immediately started taking photos of the menu like it was an art installation. Claire let Marcus get them. She refilled coffee for the businessman, brought table 6 their pancakes, checked her phone in the kitchen when Donnie wasn't looking. No messages. There were never messages. She slipped it back in her apron and grabbed the patty melts for table 2, carried them out with the muscle memory of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. Set them down. Asked if they needed anything else. Got a grunt in response. "Enjoy." Neither of them looked up. She was heading back to the kitchen when the bell chimed again, and something in the air changed. She felt it before she saw it. A shift, like the barometric pressure dropping before a storm. She turned. A woman in a wheelchair sat just inside the door, old, frail. White hair pulled back in a loose bun, hands folded in her lap, eyes scanning the room with the kind of confusion that comes from being somewhere you don't quite remember. Behind her stood a man, tall, dark suit, no tie. Maybe mid-30s. He had the kind of face people put on magazine covers. Sharp jaw, clear eyes, the bone structure of someone who'd won the genetic lottery and then invested wisely. He was looking around the diner like he'd just stepped into a museum exhibit labeled "How the Other Half Lives." Claire froze. She knew that face. Not from magazines, not from billboards or news segments. She knew it because she'd seen it in photographs, dozens of them, framed on a nightstand in a nursing home room that smelled like antiseptic and loneliness. Ethan Whitmore. Her heart kicked against her ribs. The woman in the wheelchair was Margaret. Margaret Whitmore, who Claire hadn't seen in 19 months. Margaret, who used to grip her hand at 2 in the morning and beg her not to leave. Margaret, who told her stories about a son who never visited. Margaret, who'd cried herself to sleep more nights than Claire could count. Margaret, who Claire had been fired for caring about. "Ma'am?" Donnie's voice broke through the white noise in her head. "You okay?" She wasn't okay. Margaret's eyes found hers across the diner and something happened. Recognition. Instant and absolute. The old woman's face crumpled. She made a sound, low and broken, and tried to stand even though she couldn't. "Claire." It wasn't loud, barely a whisper, but it carried. Ethan's head snapped around. He looked at his mother, then followed her gaze to Claire. His expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Confusion, maybe. Or curiosity. Claire couldn't move. Margaret was crying now, real tears, shaking, reaching out with one trembling hand like she was drowning, and Claire was the only thing keeping her above water. "Claire, please." That broke the paralysis. Claire walked over. Not fast, not slow, just walked, because her legs moved and she didn't tell them to stop. The diner was watching now. Marcus had paused mid-pour. The college kids had lowered their phones. Even table 2 had stopped chewing. She stopped a few feet away. "Hi, Margaret." The old woman sobbed, a full chest-shaking sob that made Ethan flinch. "I thought you were gone," Margaret said. "I thought I'd never see you again." Claire's throat closed. "I'm here. They wouldn't tell me where you went. I asked. Every day I asked, and they wouldn't tell me." "I know. You were the only one." Margaret was gripping the arms of her wheelchair so hard her knuckles had gone white. "The only one who stayed." Claire's eyes burned. She blinked hard and looked at Ethan. He was staring at her, not with recognition, with something else. Calculation, maybe. Trying to place her. Trying to figure out how this random waitress knew his mother well enough to make her cry. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice was exactly what she'd expected. Smooth, controlled, the voice of someone used to being in charge. "Someone who gave a damn," Claire said. It came out sharper than she meant. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Margaret made a noise, half protest, half plea. "Claire, don't." But Claire was done. Done with the silence, done with the polite smiles, done with swallowing everything down and pretending it didn't matter. "You left her there," she said. "She called for you every single night. Do you know that? Every night. And you never came." Ethan's expression went cold. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I worked nights at St. Catherine's for 2 years. I was the one who sat with her when she couldn't sleep. I was the one who read to her. I was the one who held her hand when she was scared." "Claire," Margaret's voice was breaking. "He didn't know. He should have known. They told him I didn't want to see him." That stopped her. Claire looked at Margaret. "What?" "They told him." The old woman was shaking. "The home. They told Ethan I didn't recognize him, that his visits upset me. They told him to stay away." The floor tilted. "That's not true," Claire said. "It is." Ethan's voice was tight, controlled, but barely. "They called me 6 months after we admitted her, said she'd declined, that she became agitated whenever I visited, that it was better if I didn't come." "And you believed them?" "They were medical professionals. They were liars." "I didn't know that." "You should have." His jaw clenched. "You think I wanted to stay away? You think that was easy?" "I think it was convenient." That landed. She saw it in the way his shoulders went rigid, in the way his hands curled into fists at his sides. "Convenient," he repeated. "My mother had Alzheimer's. She didn't know who I was half the time. When I visited, she screamed. She threw things. She begged me to leave. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" "No," Claire said. "But I know what it feels like to watch someone cry themselves to sleep because the person they love most in the world never shows up." Silence. Margaret was weeping openly now. Ethan looked like he'd been punched. The diner had gone completely still. Claire's hands were shaking. I need to get back to work, she said. She turned, started walking, made it 3 steps before Margaret's voice stopped her. Please don't leave. Claire stopped, didn't turn around. I've missed you so much, Margaret said. Please, just stay. For a minute. Claire closed her eyes. She thought about the last time she'd seen Margaret. The night the director of St. Catherine's had called her into his office and told her she was being let go. Violation of professional boundaries, he'd said, getting too attached to patients, making them dependent. She'd tried to say goodbye. They wouldn't let her. Margaret had been asleep, they said. It was better this way. She'd left her access card on the desk and walked out, and she hadn't been back since. Okay, she said quietly. 1 minute. She turned. Ethan was watching her like she was a problem he needed to solve. Margaret looked hopeful for the first time since they'd walked in. Sit, Margaret said, gesturing to the nearest booth. Both of you, please. Ethan moved first. He stepped around the wheelchair, slid into the booth with the kind of ease that came from a lifetime of people making space for him. Claire hesitated, then sat across from him. Margaret wheeled herself to the end of the table. Up close, she looked older, thinner. Her hands trembled constantly, and there was a vagueness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. But she was smiling, actually smiling. I can't believe you're here, she said to Claire. I prayed I'd see you again. Claire swallowed. I didn't know you'd moved. 3 months ago, Ethan brought me to a new place, Sunrise Manor. It's better. She reached out, grabbed Claire's hand. Her grip was weak, but insistent. It's so much better. I'm glad. Margaret turned to Ethan. This is her. This is the girl I told you about. Ethan was looking at Claire like he was cataloging her, taking inventory. You worked at St. Catherine's. For 2 years. Why were you fired? They said I cared too much. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. That's not a real reason. It's the one they gave me. What was the real reason? Claire hesitated. Margaret squeezed her hand. Tell him, the old woman said. Claire looked at Ethan. His eyes were gray, sharp, unforgiving. I reported them, she said. He went still. Reported them for what? Neglect? Abuse. I don't know if anything ever came of it. I filed the complaint 2 days before they fired me. What kind of neglect? The kind where patients sit in their own waste for hours because the staff is understaffed and underpaid. The kind where medication gets skipped because it's easier. The kind where your mother spent 18 months in a facility that billed you for premium care and gave her the bare minimum. Ethan's face didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, a tightness. You have proof of this? I had documentation. I don't know what happened to it. Why didn't you come to me? Claire laughed. It came out bitter. Come to you? I didn't even know your mother had a son until she told me. And when she did, all she said was that you were too busy to visit. What was I supposed to do? Show up at your office and tell you your mother was being neglected? Yes. You wouldn't have believed me. You don't know that. I know that people like you don't listen to people like me. His jaw tightened. People like me. Rich, powerful, used to getting your way. You're making a lot of assumptions. Am I wrong? He didn't answer. Margaret was watching them both, her head turning back and forth like she was at a tennis match. Stop, she said. Please, both of you. They stopped. Margaret looked at Claire. He's a good man. He made mistakes, but he's good. Then she looked at Ethan. She saved my life. I mean that. She was the only person who treated me like I mattered. Ethan's expression softened, just barely. Thank you, he said to Claire. She didn't know what to say to that. I didn't do it for you. I know. Silence settled over the table, uncomfortable, heavy. Marcus appeared with a coffee pot. Anyone want coffee? Please, Margaret said. He poured 3 cups, set them down, disappeared. Claire wrapped her hands around hers. It was too hot to drink, but she held it anyway. The heat helped, grounded her. How long have you been here? Ethan asked. At the diner? In Brooklyn. My whole life. And you're a waitress. It wasn't a question. It was an observation. Clinical. Detached. I'm a waitress, Claire confirmed. You went to college? 2 years. Dropped out. Why? Money. He absorbed that. What did you study? Nursing. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. You were studying to be a nurse? Yeah. And you ended up at St. Catherine's. I needed a job. They were hiring. You could have gone back, finished your degree. Claire looked at him, really looked at him, at the expensive suit, the watch that probably cost more than her yearly rent, the haircut that screamed professional grooming. Could I? She asked. He frowned. If you wanted to. You think it's that easy. I think people make choices. And I think people like you have no idea what choices look like for people like me. His frown deepened. You keep saying that. People like you. People like me. What does that mean? It means you've never had to choose between paying rent and eating. It means you've never worked 3 jobs and still come up short. It means when you make a mistake, you have a safety net. When I make a mistake, I'm homeless. You don't know anything about my life. I know you're a billionaire. So that means I've never struggled? It means you've forgotten what struggle looks like. Margaret made a small sound. Distressed. Claire immediately felt guilty. This wasn't supposed to be about her. This was supposed to be about Margaret. I'm sorry, she said. That was out of line. Ethan shook his head. No, you're right. I don't know what your life is like. And I don't know yours. But you're judging me anyway. You judged me first. He almost smiled. Almost. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a moment. Margaret drank her coffee with both hands, slow and careful. She talked about you all the time, Claire said finally. She was so proud of you. Ethan's expression cracked, just for a second. Then it was back in place. I should have visited more, he said. They told you not to. I should have anyway. Margaret reached out, put her hand on his. You're here now? He looked at her, really looked at her, and Claire saw something in his face she hadn't expected. Grief, raw and unfiltered. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I know. They stayed like that for a while, mother and son, connected. Claire felt like an intruder. She started to stand. I should get back to work. Wait. Margaret's hand shot out, grabbed hers again. Will you come see me? At Sunrise Manor? Yes. Please. I want you to see where I am now. I want you to know I'm okay. Claire hesitated. Ethan was watching her. I work a lot, she said. Whenever you can. Just, please, don't disappear again. There was something in the old woman's voice that broke her. Okay, Claire said. I'll come. Margaret beamed, actual joy on her face. Thank you. Ethan pulled out his phone. Give me your number. I'll text you the address. Claire rattled it off. A moment later, her phone buzzed in her apron. Got it, she said. He nodded, put his phone away, looked at her. I mean, what I said. Thank you for taking care of her. You already thanked me. I don't think I can thank you enough. Claire didn't know what to say to that either. She excused herself, went back to work, refilled coffee, took orders, smiled at people who didn't see her. But the whole time, she felt Ethan's eyes on her. When they left an hour later, Margaret waved. Ethan left a $100 bill on the table. Claire stared at it for a long time. Then she picked it up, slipped it in her apron, and went back to work. Biti. That night, Claire lay in her studio apartment and stared at the ceiling. Her phone was on the nightstand. The address from Ethan glowed on the screen. Sunrise Manor, 2847 Ocean Parkway. She should delete it. She should forget she ever saw Margaret again. Nothing good could come from getting involved with these people. But she couldn't shake the image of Margaret's face, the hope in her eyes. Don't disappear again. Claire closed her eyes. She'd go. Once. Just to make sure Margaret was okay. Then she'd walk away. That was the plan. It was a terrible plan. 3 days later, Claire took the Q train to Ocean Parkway. Sunrise Manor was exactly what she expected. Clean, modern, the kind of place that charged 5 figures a month and called it affordable. The lobby had fresh flowers. The furniture was real wood, not particle board. The receptionist smiled when Claire walked in. "I'm here to see Margaret Whitmore," she said. The receptionist checked her computer. "Are you family?" "Friend." "Let me call up." She picked up the phone, murmured something, hung up. "Second floor, room 212. Claire took the elevator. The hallway smelled like lavender instead of bleach. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Everything was painted in calming neutrals. It was so far removed from St. Catherine's it felt like a different planet. Room 212 was at the end of the hall. Claire knocked. "Come in." She pushed the door open. Margaret was sitting in a chair by the window, a book in her lap. She looked up, and her whole face lit up. "Claire." "Hi, Margaret." The old woman struggled to stand. Claire crossed the room, helped her. "You came," Margaret said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I said I would." "I know, but—" She trailed off, smiled. "Thank you." The room was big, bigger than the one at St. Catherine's. There was actual furniture, a real bed, not a hospital cot, photos on the dresser, flowers on the windowsill. "It's nice," Claire said. "It's wonderful." Margaret gestured to a chair. "Sit, please." Claire sat. They talked. Small things at first. The weather, the diner, how Margaret was adjusting. But eventually the conversation shifted. "I need to tell you something," Margaret said, "about St. Catherine's." Claire went still. "Okay." "I didn't know they fired you, not at first. They told me you'd found another job, that you didn't work there anymore." "They lied." "I know that now." Margaret's hands twisted in her lap. "I asked for you every day. They said you were too busy, that you'd moved on. I believed them." "It's okay." "It's not." The old woman's eyes were wet. "You were the only good thing about that place, and they took you away." Claire reached out, covered Margaret's hands with hers. "I'm here now." Margaret nodded, tried to smile. "Ethan feels terrible," she said. "He doesn't need to." "He does. He keeps saying he should have known, that he should have checked on me more." "He couldn't have known. He's a smart man. He should have figured it out." Claire didn't argue. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Margaret spoke again. "He's not what you think," she said. "What do I think?" "That he's cold, unfeeling, that he didn't care." Claire didn't deny it. "He's been hurt," Margaret continued. "His wife died. Did you know that?" Claire shook her head. 5 years ago. Cancer. It was fast. 8 months from diagnosis to gone." Margaret's voice broke. He was devastated, and then he had to raise their daughter alone. Something twisted in Claire's chest. "I didn't know." "He doesn't talk about it. He buried himself in work, threw everything into his company. I think it was easier than dealing with the grief." "How old is his daughter?" 7. Her name is Sophie. She's wonderful, smart, funny, looks just like her mother. Claire absorbed that. A widower. A single father. Raising a daughter alone while running a company. It didn't excuse anything, but it complicated things. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Margaret smiled. "Because I think you're angry at him, and I don't want you to be." "I'm not angry." "Liar." Claire almost laughed. "Okay, maybe a little." "He's a good man, Claire. He made mistakes, but he's trying." "I know." "Do you?" Claire thought about it, about the look on Ethan's face when Margaret called him a good man, the grief in his eyes when he apologized. "Yeah," she said, "I do." Margaret relaxed. They talked for another hour, about nothing, about everything. When Claire finally stood to leave, Margaret grabbed her hand. "Will you come back?" "If you want me to." "I do." "Then I will." Margaret smiled. "Good." Claire left feeling lighter than she had in months. She didn't see Ethan on her way out, but he saw her. He was standing in his hallway, just out of sight, watching as she walked to the elevator. And he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Claire started visiting Margaret every Thursday. It became a routine. She'd finish her shift at the Bluebird, take the Q train to Ocean Parkway, spend 2 hours with the old woman, then head home. Simple. Predictable. Safe. Except it wasn't safe at all, because Ethan was always there, not in the room. He had the decency to give them space, but she'd see him in the hallway, in the lobby. Once in the parking lot, loading Margaret's wheelchair into the back of a black SUV that probably cost more than Claire would make in 5 years. He'd nod. She'd nod back. Neither of them said much, but there was something in the way he looked at her, like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. It made her uncomfortable. On her 4th visit, Margaret was tired. She kept drifting off mid-sentence, her head nodding forward, then jerking back up. "You should rest," Claire said. "I'm not tired." "You're falling asleep." "I'm just resting my eyes." But even as she said it, her eyelids were drooping. Claire helped her to the bed, tucked the blanket around her. Margaret's hand found hers. "Stay until I fall asleep?" "Of course." It took less than 5 minutes. Margaret's breathing evened out, her grip loosened, and she was gone. Claire stood to leave, and that's when she saw him. Ethan was in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. Her heart jumped. "How long have you been standing there?" "Not long." "That's not an answer." "Long enough." He stepped into the room, kept his voice low. "She sleeps better when you're here." "How would you know?" "The nurses tell me." Claire moved past him into the hallway. He followed. "Can we talk?" he asked. "About what?" "About my mother. About St. Catherine's." He paused. "About you." She stopped walking, turned to face him. "What about me?" "I want to know why you stayed. At St. Catherine's. If it was as bad as you said, why didn't you leave?" "I needed the job. There are other jobs. Not ones that paid what they did. So it was just about money." She felt her jaw tighten. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "I didn't mean it that way." "Yes, you did." She started walking again. He kept pace. "You're angry." "I'm tired." "Of me?" "Of this conversation." They reached the elevator. She hit the button. He stood next to her, too close, smelling like expensive cologne and something else. Something clean. "I'm trying to understand," he said. "Understand what?" "You. Why you cared so much about a stranger." The elevator dinged, the doors opened. Claire stepped inside. "She wasn't a stranger," she said. Ethan caught the door before it closed. "Then what was she?" "Someone who needed help." "And you always help people who need it?" "When I can." "Why?" She looked at him, really looked at him. At the genuine confusion on his face, like the concept of helping someone without an ulterior motive was foreign. "Because nobody helped me," she said quietly. The doors tried to close. He held them open. "What does that mean?" "It means I know what it's like to be invisible, to need someone and have nobody show up." She pressed the lobby button. "Let go of the door." He didn't. "I want to help," he said. "Help with what?" "Whatever you need." She laughed. It came out sharp. "I don't need anything from you." "Everyone needs something. Not from you." "Why not?" "Because people like you don't help people like me without expecting something in return." His jaw clenched. "You don't know me." "I know enough." "No," he said. "You don't." The elevator started beeping. Someone down the hall yelled at them to let the doors close. Ethan stepped back. The doors slid shut. Claire rode down alone, her heart pounding. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the conversation. The look on his face when she said nobody had helped her, like it had never occurred to him that people existed outside his world of safety nets and second chances. Her phone buzzed at 11. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello?" "It's Ethan Whitmore." She sat up. "How did you get this number?" "You gave it to me." "At the diner." Right, she had. "It's late," she said. I know, I'm sorry, He paused. "I wanted to apologize for earlier." "You don't need to apologize." "I do, you were right. I was being condescending." She didn't argue. "I've been thinking about what you said," he continued, "about nobody helping you, and I realized I don't know anything about your life, not really." "You don't need to." "Maybe I want to." "Why?" Because my mother loves you. And I want to understand why. Claire pulled her knees to her chest. Outside, a siren wailed past her building. I'm not that interesting, she said. I disagree. You don't know me either. I'd like to. Something in his voice made her chest tighten. Mr. Whitmore. Ethan. Ethan, I appreciate the call, but it's late and I have an early shift tomorrow. Right. Of course. He sounded disappointed. I'll let you go. Okay. Claire? Yeah? Thank you. For everything you did for my mother. I mean it. She closed her eyes. You're welcome. She hung up before he could say anything else. But she didn't sleep. The next Thursday, Margaret was in a mood. I want to go outside, she announced the moment Claire walked in. It's 40 degrees out. I don't care. I'm tired of these walls. Claire looked at the nurse who was checking Margaret's vitals. The woman shrugged. Fresh air won't hurt her. Just keep her warm. So Claire bundled Margaret in 2 sweaters and a coat, wrapped a blanket around her legs, and wheeled her outside to the courtyard. It was empty except for a couple of pigeons fighting over a piece of bread. Margaret tipped her face up to the sun. Better? Claire asked. Much. They sat in silence for a while. Then Margaret spoke. He asks about you. Claire's stomach flipped. Who? Don't play dumb. It doesn't suit you. I'm not playing anything. He wants to know about your life, where you grew up, what you do when you're not working, if you have family. What did you tell him? That he should ask you himself. I'd rather you didn't encourage him. Margaret turned to look at her. Why not? Because it's weird. What's weird about it? He's a billionaire. I'm a waitress. We don't exist in the same universe. You exist in mine. That's different. How? Claire didn't have an answer for that. Margaret reached over, patted her hand. He's lonely, you know. He has his daughter. Sophia's 7. She's wonderful, but she's not adult company. Margaret's expression softened. He hasn't dated anyone since his wife died. 5 years, Claire. 5 years of throwing himself into work and pretending he's fine. I'm not a grief counselor. I'm not asking you to be. Then what are you asking? Just don't shut him out, that's all. Claire looked away, watched the pigeons. One of them had won the bread and was trying to fly off with it while the other gave chase. I'll think about it, she said. It was the best she could offer. 2 days later, Ethan showed up at the diner. Claire was refilling sugar dispensers when the bell chimed, and there he was. Black jeans, gray sweater. No suit this time, but he still looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog. Every head in the place turned. He saw her, walked over. What are you doing here? She asked. Having lunch? There are better places. I like this one. Since when? Since now. He slid into a booth. Can I get a menu? She wanted to say no, wanted to tell him to leave. But Donnie was watching from the kitchen, and Marcus was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. She grabbed a menu, slapped it down in front of him. Coffee? She asked. Please. She poured him a cup, set it down hard enough that it sloshed over the rim. Careful, he said. It's hot. I noticed. She walked away before she said something she'd regret. He ordered a burger, fries, ate slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Twice she caught him watching her, both times he looked away. When he was done, she brought the check. Anything else? Yeah. He pulled out his phone, slid it across the table. Put your number in. You already have my number. I want to make sure it's right. It's right. Humor me. She stared at him. He stared back. She grabbed the phone, typed in her number, shoved it back. Happy? Very. He paid, left another ridiculous tip, stood to leave. See you around, Claire. Don't count on it. He smiled, actually smiled. I am. He left. Marcus appeared at her elbow 2 seconds later. Who was that? Nobody. That was not nobody, that was somebody, a rich somebody. Drop it, Marcus. Does he have a brother, a cousin, a significantly less attractive friend? Claire grabbed a rag, started wiping down tables. Marcus followed. Come on, give me something. There's nothing to give. He looked at you like you were the only person in the room. He looked at me like I was a waitress. Nuh-uh. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know the difference. She stopped wiping, turned to face him. What do you want me to say? That you're going to call him. I'm not going to call him. Why not? Because it's complicated. Life's complicated. That's not a reason. It is for me. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. You know what your problem is? I have a feeling you're going to tell me. You think you don't deserve good things. She opened her mouth, closed it. I'm right, aren't I? Marcus said gently. You don't know what you're talking about. I know you work yourself half to death for tips that don't cover your rent. I know you never take a day off. I know you eat ramen 4 nights a week because you can't afford anything else. He paused. And I know you're too proud to ask for help. I don't need help. Everybody needs help. She'd heard that before, recently. I'm fine, she said. You're not, but you will be. He squeezed her shoulder. Just think about it, okay? She didn't answer. That night, her phone rang again. Ethan. She let it go to voicemail. He called back. She ignored it. The third time she answered, What? You're avoiding me. I'm working. It's 9 at night. I have 2 jobs. That stopped him. 2? Yeah. Where's the second one? Why does it matter? It doesn't. I'm just curious. She sighed, sat down on the steps outside her building. I clean offices. Downtown. Tuesday and Thursday nights. Silence. Then, how long have you been doing that? 3 years? That's why you look tired. I am tired. More silence. Claire, he said finally, can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. Why do you work so hard? Because I have to. No, I mean, why don't you have help? Family? Friends? She looked up at the sky. No stars, just the orange glow of the city. I don't have family, she said. My mom died when I was 16. Dad left before I was born. No siblings. No aunts or uncles or cousins who gave a damn. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm used to it. That doesn't make it okay. It's my normal. He was quiet for a moment. What about friends? What about them? Do you have any? She thought about it. Really thought about it. No, she said. Not really. Why not? Because I don't have time. I work 70 hours a week. When exactly am I supposed to build friendships? That's not living. It's surviving. There's a difference. Not in my world. She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. I want to help, he said. I don't want your help. Why not? Because I don't want to owe anyone anything. You wouldn't owe me. That's not how it works. It is if I say it is. No, she said firmly. It's not. He sighed. You're stubborn, and you're persistent. Is that a bad thing? I haven't decided yet. She could hear the smile in his voice. Fair enough. They talked for another 20 minutes. About nothing. About everything. He told her about Sophie, how she loved dinosaurs and hated vegetables, how she asked a million questions and never ran out of energy. Claire found herself smiling. She sounds great, she said. She is. You should meet her. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because she's 7. She'll get attached. Would that be so bad? Yes. Why? Because I'm not staying. That came out before she could stop it. Ethan went quiet. What does that mean? Claire closed her eyes. Nothing. Forget I said it. Claire, I have to go. Wait. She hung up. Then she sat on the steps for a long time, staring at nothing. The next Thursday, Margaret was reading when Claire arrived. You're late, the old woman said without looking up. Traffic. Liar. Claire smiled despite herself. How'd you know? Because you're always early. Margaret set her book down. What's wrong? Nothing? Another lie. You're on a roll today. Claire sat. Margaret waited. Your son keeps calling me, Claire said finally. Margaret's face lit up. Does he? It's not a good thing. Why not? Because I don't know what he wants. Maybe he just wants to talk. Nobody just wants to talk. Ethan does. Claire shook her head. I don't fit into his life, Margaret. You know that. I know no such thing. He's a billionaire with a daughter and a company and a life that doesn't include waitresses from Brooklyn. He's a man who's been alone for too long, and you're a woman who deserves to be seen. I am seen. By who? Claire didn't answer. Margaret reached over, took her hand. You've spent your whole life taking care of other people. When do you get to be taken care of? I don't need to be taken care of. Everyone needs that. Not me. Especially you. Claire pulled her hand away. Can we talk about something else? Margaret studied her, then nodded. All right, but I'm not done with this conversation. I figured. They talked about other things. The book Margaret was reading, the new nurse who sang off key, the pigeons in the courtyard who'd started a full-on turf war. But when Claire stood to leave, Margaret grabbed her wrist. He's a good man, she said. Give him a chance. I'll think about it. You said that last time. I'm still thinking, Margaret smiled. That's all I ask? Claire took the elevator down. Ethan was in the lobby. Of course he was. We need to stop meeting like this, she said. I was hoping we could start meeting on purpose. I'm busy. Tomorrow night, dinner. No. Why not? Because I work tomorrow night. Sunday then. I work Sunday. When don't you work? Never. He looked at her for a long moment. That's not sustainable. It's my life. It doesn't have to be. Yes, she said. It does. She walked past him toward the doors. He followed. One dinner, he said. That's all I'm asking. Why? Because my mother's right. I want to know you. You already know me. I know pieces. I want the whole picture. She stopped, turned to face him. Why do you care? I don't know, he said honestly. But I do. They stood there in the lobby of Sunrise Manor, surrounded by soft music and lavender air fresheners, and something shifted. Claire felt it. That dangerous thing, the thing that made you want to believe. One dinner, she said, but I picked the place. His face broke into a smile. A real one. Deal. She regretted it before she even got on the train. But she showed up anyway. Sunday night, 6 o'clock, at a Thai place in Park Slope that she'd been going to since she was 18. Small, cramped, plastic tables and Christmas lights strung across the ceiling year-round. Ethan looked completely out of place. He also looked happy. This is great, he said, sliding into the booth across from her. It's a dump. It has character. That's what people say about dumps. He laughed. She'd never heard him laugh before. It was a good sound. They ordered pad thai for her, green curry for him. He ate with chopsticks, which surprised her. What? He asked, catching her staring. Nothing. You thought I wouldn't know how to use chopsticks? Maybe. I lived in Tokyo for 2 years. When? After college, before I started the company. What were you doing there? Learning, working, trying to figure out who I was. She took a sip of water. Did you? Not really, but I learned how to use chopsticks. She almost smiled. They talked. Really talked. He asked about her childhood. She told him about growing up in Brooklyn with a single mom who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. About watching her mom get sicker and sicker until cancer took her before Claire's 17th birthday. I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly. It was a long time ago. That doesn't make it hurt less. She looked at him. No, it doesn't. He told her about his wife, Rebecca, how they'd met in college, how she'd been the one who pushed him to start his company when he was too scared to try, how she'd died 5 years ago and taken half his heart with her. Sophie looks just like her, he said. Same eyes, same smile. Sometimes it's hard to look at her because all I see is what I lost. That must be awful. It is, but it's also wonderful because I have this piece of Rebecca that's still here, still alive, still laughing and asking questions and making me crazy. Claire felt something crack in her chest. You really love her, she said. More than anything. She's lucky. I'm the lucky one. They finished eating. split the check even though he tried to pay for everything, walked outside into the cold. "Thank you," he said. "For tonight, it was just dinner. It was more than that." She looked at him. He looked back. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because you're you and I'm me, and this doesn't make sense." "It doesn't have to make sense." "Yes, it does." "Why?" "Because I can't afford to get hurt." That stopped him. "I wouldn't hurt you," he said. "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." She shook her head, started walking. He caught up. "Claire, wait. I should go. Please." She stopped, turned. "What do you want from me?" "I don't know," he said, "but I know I want to find out." She looked at him for a long time, at the earnestness in his eyes, the vulnerability. "One more dinner," she said. "That's it." "Okay. And you let me pay next time." "Deal." She walked away before she could change her mind. But she was smiling, and she couldn't remember the last time that had happened. One dinner turned into three. Three turned into weekly phone calls that stretched past midnight. And somewhere between the Thai place in Park Slope and a hole-in-the-wall pizza joint in Bed-Stuy, Claire stopped counting. She was in trouble. She knew it, but she couldn't seem to stop. Margaret noticed first. "You're glowing," she said during one of Claire's Thursday visits. "I'm not glowing." "You are. You look happy." "I'm the same as always." "Liar." Margaret was grinning. "He makes you happy." Claire felt her cheeks heat. "We're just friends." "Do friends blush when you say their name?" "I'm not blushing." "Your face is red." "It's warm in here." Margaret laughed. Actually laughed. It was a sound Claire had heard maybe twice in all the time she'd known her. "I like seeing you like this," the old woman said. "Like what?" "Alive." That word sat heavy in Claire's chest. They were sitting in Margaret's room, afternoon light streaming through the window. Outside, the trees were starting to bud. Spring coming, whether anyone was ready or not. "He talks about you too," Margaret said. "I doubt that." "He does. He told me last week that you're the first person in years who doesn't treat him like a walking checkbook." Claire picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "That's a low bar." "Maybe, but it matters to him." "We're from different worlds, Margaret." "So?" "So it can't work." "Why not?" "Because eventually he'll wake up and realize I don't fit, and I'll be the one who gets hurt." Margaret reached over, covered Claire's hand with her own. The old woman's skin was paper thin, veins visible beneath the surface. "Or," she said quietly, "he'll wake up and realize you're exactly what he's been looking for." Claire wanted to believe that. She really did. But she'd spent too many years learning that good things didn't happen to people like her. That night, Ethan called. "I want you to meet Sophie," he said. Claire's stomach dropped. "What?" "My daughter. I want you to meet her." "That's not a good idea." "Why not?" "Because she's 7. She'll get attached." "Maybe that's not a bad thing." "Ethan, just lunch, that's all. 1 hour. If it's awful, we never do it again." She should say no. She knew she should say no. "Okay," she said instead. "Really?" 1 hour. That's it." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Saturday. I'll pick you up at 11. I can meet you somewhere. I know where you live, Claire." "How?" "I'm resourceful." "That's creepy." "It's efficient." She hung up before she could laugh. Saturday morning, she stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes trying to figure out what you wear to meet a 7-year-old billionaire's daughter. Everything she owned was either work clothes or worn-out jeans. She settled on jeans and a sweater that didn't have any visible stains. Good enough. Ethan showed up at exactly 11 in the same black SUV she'd seen at Sunrise Manor. He got out to open her door, which felt ridiculous. "I can open my own door," she said. "I know. Let me anyway." She rolled her eyes but got in. Sophie was in the back seat. Small, dark curls pulled into 2 ponytails, bright eyes that studied Claire with the kind of intensity that made her want to squirm. "Hi," Claire said. "Hi." Sophie tilted her head. "Are you Dad's girlfriend?" Ethan choked on nothing. "No," Claire said quickly. "I'm just a friend." "Oh." Sophie looked disappointed. "Dad needs a girlfriend." "Sophie." Ethan said, his voice strained. What? You do. You're lonely. I'm not lonely. Yes, you are. Grandma said so. Ethan shot Claire a look that said, help me. Claire bit back a smile. Your grandma talks a lot, huh? All the time. She says you're really nice. That's sweet of her. Are you? Nice? I try to be. Sophie considered this. Dad says you work at a diner. I do. Is it fun? Not really. Then why do you do it? Because I have to pay rent. Dad says rent is a scam. Ethan coughed. I said the rental market in New York is overpriced. Same thing. Claire decided she liked this kid. They went to a cafe in Prospect Park. Ethan ordered coffee. Claire got tea. Sophie asked for hot chocolate with extra whipped cream and a chocolate croissant. Breakfast of champions, Claire said. Sophie grinned. Dad never lets me have this much sugar. Snitch, Ethan muttered. They sat outside even though it was cold. Sophie talked non-stop. About school, about her best friend Mia, about the dinosaur book she was reading, about how she wanted to be a paleontologist when she grew up. That's cool, Claire said. You think so? Yeah, dinosaurs are awesome. Dad thinks it's a phase. It might be, Ethan said. It's not. Sophie looked at Claire. Do you like dinosaurs? I don't know much about them. I can teach you. Did you know that the T-Rex couldn't actually roar? It probably made a sound more like a really big pigeon. Claire blinked. Seriously? Yeah, isn't that weird? Super weird. Sophie launched into an explanation about vocal cords and fossilized tracheas that went completely over Claire's head. But she listened anyway, and Ethan watched them both with an expression she couldn't read. After an hour, Sophie announced she had to pee. Can you take her? Ethan asked Claire. Sure. They went inside. The bathroom was single-stall, bright yellow walls covered in framed photos of coffee beans. Sophie washed her hands, studied Claire in the mirror. I like you, she said. I like you too. Are you going to marry my dad? Claire nearly swallowed her tongue. What? No, we're just friends. That's what he said. He's right. But you could be more than friends. It doesn't work like that. Why not? How do you explain class differences to a 7-year-old? Because your dad and I are very different, Claire said carefully. So? Dad says different is good. He would say that. Sophie dried her hands, turned to face her. My mom died. The shift was so sudden Claire didn't know how to respond. I know, she said. I'm sorry. I don't remember her much, just little things. Like she smelled like lemons, and she sang really loud in the car. Claire's throat tightened. She sounds nice. She was. Dad says she would have liked you. He doesn't know that. He said it anyway. They stood there in the bathroom of a cafe in Brooklyn, and Claire felt something break open inside her chest. Your dad's a good man, she said. I know, but he's sad a lot. He thinks I don't notice, but I do. He loves you very much. I know that too. Sophie looked up at her. Do you make him less sad? The question was so earnest it hurt. I hope so, Claire said. Sophie smiled. Good. They went back outside. Ethan looked up as they approached, something soft in his expression. Everything okay? Perfect, Sophie said, climbing back into her seat. They stayed another hour. Sophie taught Claire about velociraptors. Ethan told a story about the time Sophie tried to dig for fossils in their backyard and flooded the basement. Sophie protested that it wasn't flooding, it was excavation. Claire laughed more than she had in months. When they finally left, Sophie hugged her, just wrapped her arms around Claire's waist and squeezed. Come back soon, she said. I'll try. Promise? Claire glanced at Ethan. He was watching them, something unreadable in his eyes. Promise, she said. Ethan drove her home. Sophie fell asleep in the back seat, head lolling against the window. She doesn't do that, Ethan said quietly. Do what? Open up to people, not like that. She's a good kid. She likes you. I like her too. They pulled up in front of Claire's building. Ethan put the car in park but didn't turn it off. Thank you, he said. For today? I didn't do anything. You did. He looked at her. She hasn't been that happy in a long time. Claire's chest ached. She misses her mom. Every day. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's hard, being a single parent, trying to be enough for her when I know I'm not. You are enough. You don't know that. I saw you today. You're more than enough. Something passed between them. Something raw and honest. Claire, he started. Her phone rang. She glanced at it. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Hello? Is this Claire Dawson? Yes. Who's this? My name is Dr. Patricia Hendricks. I'm calling from the New York State Department of Health. Claire's stomach dropped. Okay. I'm following up on a complaint you filed 19 months ago regarding St. Catherine's nursing home. The world tilted. I filed that complaint almost 2 years ago, Claire said. Why are you calling now? We've been conducting an investigation. I was hoping we could meet. There are some things I'd like to discuss with you. What kind of things? I'd prefer to do this in person. Are you available this week? Claire looked at Ethan. He was watching her, concern etched across his face. Yeah, she said. I'm available. Tuesday at 10? I can come to you if that's easier. Tuesday's fine. Dr. Hendricks gave her an address in Lower Manhattan. They hung up. Ethan was still watching her. What was that? He asked. Claire's hands were shaking. The Department of Health. They're investigating St. Catherine's. His expression went very still. Because of your complaint? I guess. What did they say? Just that they want to talk to me. About what? I don't know. But she had a feeling, a sick, twisting feeling in her gut. I'm coming with you, Ethan said. You don't need to. I'm coming. She looked at him, at the determination in his eyes. Okay, she said. Tuesday morning, they met outside a glass building in the financial district. Ethan was in a suit. Claire wore the same jeans and sweater from Saturday because it was the nicest thing she owned. They rode the elevator to the 14th floor in silence. Dr. Hendricks met them in a conference room. She was 50-something, gray hair pulled back in a bun, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Ms. Dawson, she said, shaking Claire's hand. Then she looked at Ethan. And you are? Ethan Whitmore. My mother was a patient at St. Catherine's. Recognition flickered across her face. I see. Please, sit. They sat. Dr. Hendricks pulled out a file. Thick. Way too thick. Thank you for coming, she said. I know this is overdue. We should have contacted you months ago. Why didn't you? Claire asked. Because your complaint was initially dismissed. Claire's blood went cold. What? The investigator assigned to your case concluded there was insufficient evidence to proceed. That's bullshit. I agree, which is why I reopened it. Ethan leaned forward. Why? Because 3 months ago, another complaint was filed. And then another. And another. 5 in total, all from former employees, all describing the same pattern of neglect and abuse. Claire felt sick. What pattern? Ethan asked, his voice tight. Dr. Hendricks opened the file, pulled out a stack of documents. Systematic mistreatment of patients, overprescription of sedatives to keep residents docile, deliberate isolation from family members, and financial exploitation. Financial exploitation, Ethan repeated slowly. St. Catherine's was billing families for services they never provided, physical therapy sessions that never happened, specialized medical care that was never administered. They inflated costs across the board while cutting corners on actual patient care. Ethan's jaw clenched. How much? We're still calculating, but based on what we've found so far, we estimate they defrauded families out of approximately $12 million over a 6-year period. The number hung in the air. 12 million, Claire whispered. And that's a conservative estimate. Ethan stood up, started pacing. Claire had never seen him like this. Barely controlled fury radiating off him. My mother was there for 18 months, he said. How much did they steal from me? Dr. Hendricks flipped through the file. According to our records, you paid approximately $43,000 a month. For what? According to the invoices, round-the-clock nursing care, physical therapy 3 times a week, occupational therapy twice a week, specialized memory care programming, and nutritional consultation. Did she receive any of that? Dr. Hendricks looked at Claire. Claire shook her head. No. She got medication. That's it. Sometimes they'd wheel her to the common room and leave her there for hours. I never saw a physical therapist. I never saw an occupational therapist. The specialized memory care was a TV playing in the corner. Ethan's hands were shaking. So I paid $500,000 for them to drug my mother and ignore her. I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore. Sorry doesn't cut it. He wasn't wrong. Dr. Hendricks pulled out another document. There's more. Of course there is, Ethan said bitterly. We found evidence that St. Catherine's deliberately interfered with family contact. Phone calls were screened, mail was intercepted. Visiting hours were restricted under false pretenses. Claire's vision blurred. They told families their loved ones didn't want to see them. Yes. They told me my mother had become agitated during my visits, Ethan said, that it was better if I stayed away. They told that to at least 14 other families. It was policy. Policy, he repeated. They had a policy of separating people from their families. It appears so. The working theory is that isolated patients are easier to control. Fewer questions, fewer witnesses. Claire felt like she was going to be sick. What about the medical director? She asked. Dr. Morrison, he signed off on everything. Dr. Hendricks' expression hardened. Dr. Morrison is currently under criminal investigation, along with the facility administrator, the director of nursing, and 3 other staff members. Good, Claire said. We need your help, Dr. Hendricks said. Both of you. We need statements, documentation, anything you can remember about your time there. I'll give you whatever you need, Ethan said, but I want more than statements. I want them destroyed. Mr. Whitmore, they took advantage of vulnerable people. They lied. They stole. They isolated patients from their families and pocketed the money. I want them in prison. That's up to the district attorney. Then connect me with the DA. I can facilitate that. Good. Claire had been silent through most of this, but now she spoke. What about the other patients? She asked. The ones still there. Dr. Hendricks looked grim. St. Catherine's lost its license last week. They have 30 days to relocate all current residents. Where will they go? Other facilities. We're working with families to find appropriate placements. And if they don't have families, the state will handle it. That didn't make Claire feel better. They spent 2 more hours going over everything. Claire told them about the nights Margaret cried herself to sleep, about the patients left in wet sheets, about the medication errors and the understaffing and the CNA who'd slapped a resident across the face when she thought no one was watching. Ethan told them about the invoices, the phone calls that never went through, the letters he'd sent that Margaret never received. By the time they left, Claire felt hollowed out. They stood on the sidewalk outside the building. It was starting to rain. I should have known, Ethan said. You couldn't have. I should have checked, should have visited anyway, should have... Stop! Claire grabbed his arm. You can't do this to yourself. They lied to me, and I believed them, and my mother suffered because of it. They lied to everyone. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. But you're here now. You're fighting back. That matters. He looked at her. Rain was starting to soak through his suit. Come on, she said. Let's get coffee. They ended up at a diner 3 blocks away. Not the Bluebird, but close enough. Same cracked vinyl booths, same burnt coffee smell. Ethan ordered black coffee, didn't touch it. Claire ordered tea. Wrapped her hands around the cup for warmth. I'm going to sue them, Ethan said. Good. Not just for the money, for what they did, for all of it. You should. Will you help? She looked up. Me? You were there. You saw what happened. Your testimony would be invaluable. I'll do whatever you need. Thank you. They sat in silence for a moment. Margaret can't know, Ethan said suddenly. Not yet. Not until we have more answers. She'll find out eventually. I know, but I want to control how she hears it. She's been doing so well. I don't want to set her back. Claire understood that. Okay. Can you keep it from her when you visit? Yeah, I can do that. But it felt wrong. Keeping secrets from Margaret. Still, she agreed. Over the next 2 weeks, everything accelerated. The district attorney opened a criminal investigation. The FBI got involved because of the wire fraud. News outlets picked up the story. Suddenly, St. Catharines was everywhere. Headlines about elder abuse, exposés about for-profit nursing homes, interviews with families who'd been scammed. Claire watched it all from the outside, trying to process the fact that her complaint from 19 months ago had started this. Ethan hired a team of lawyers, not just for his case, but for all the families who'd been defrauded. He set up a fund to help relocate patients, put together a coalition of advocates. He threw himself into it completely. Claire barely saw him. He called, but the calls were shorter, distracted. He was always in meetings, always on another call, always fighting. She understood. She did. But she missed him, and that terrified her. On a Thursday in late April, she went to visit Margaret. The old woman took one look at her and said, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "You're lying again." Claire sat down. "I'm fine." "No, you're not, and neither is Ethan. He's been different lately, distant. He's busy." "With what?" Claire hesitated. They'd agreed not to tell Margaret. But sitting there looking at the old woman's concerned face, she couldn't keep lying. "There's an investigation," she said, "into St. Catharines." Margaret went very still. "What kind of investigation?" "The kind that involves the FBI." The color drained from Margaret's face. Claire told her everything, the fraud, the neglect, the systematic isolation, all of it. Margaret listened without interrupting. When Claire finished, the old woman's hands were shaking. "All that time," she whispered, "I thought Ethan didn't care. I thought he'd forgotten about me." "He never forgot." "But they told him. They lied. To him, to you, to everyone." Margaret started crying. Not the gentle tears Claire had seen before. These were wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Claire moved to the bed, wrapped her arms around her. "I'm sorry," Margaret said. "I'm so sorry." "You have nothing to be sorry for." "I blamed him. In my head. When he didn't visit, I blamed him. He knows that, and he doesn't hold it against you." "I should have known, should have realized." "You were sick, and they took advantage of that. None of this is your fault." Margaret clung to her. "I want them to pay. They will. Promise me." "I promise." They sat like that for a long time, until Margaret's tears dried up and her breathing evened out. "Does Ethan know you told me?" she asked finally. "Not yet." "He'll be upset." "Probably." "I'll talk to him." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Margaret pulled back, looked at Claire. "Thank you for telling me the truth." "You deserve to know." "I did. But it took courage to go against Ethan's wishes." Claire shrugged. "I'm good at that." Margaret smiled, weak but real. "You're good for him, you know." "I don't know about that." "I do." Claire's phone buzzed. "Ethan. Need to talk. Can you meet me at my office?" She texted back. "When?" "Now." She looked at Margaret. "I have to go." "I know. Be patient with him. He's carrying a lot right now." "I will." She kissed Margaret's forehead and left. Ethan's office was in Midtown, 50th floor of a glass tower with views that probably cost more than Claire would make in her lifetime. The receptionist directed her to a conference room. Ethan was inside, papers spread across the table. He looked exhausted. "Hey," she said. He looked up. "Hey, you okay?" "No." He ran a hand through his hair. "We got the full audit results today." "And?" "It's worse than we thought. 14 million in fraud, 37 families affected, and that's just what we can prove." Claire sat down. "What happens now?" "Criminal charges, civil suits. St. Catharines will be liquidated to pay restitution." He paused. "And I'm going after everyone involved, the administrators, the doctors, the board members. All of them." "Good. It's going to take years." "I know. And it's going to get ugly." "Well, I know that too." He looked at her. Really looked at her. "I told my mother." Claire's stomach dropped. "What?" "About the investigation. She called me this morning, said you told her." "Ethan, I'm sorry. I know we agreed. Don't apologize. You were right. She deserved to know." "You're not mad?" "I'm relieved. I hated keeping it from her. He stood, walked to the window. She cried for an hour. Then she told me she wants to be part of this, wants to testify, wants to make sure this never happens to anyone else. She's strong. She is, because of you. That's not true. Yes, it is. He turned to face her. You kept her alive when everyone else gave up. You gave her hope, you gave her dignity, and now she wants to fight. That's because of you. Claire didn't know what to say. Ethan crossed the room, stopped in front of her. I need to ask you something, he said. Okay. This fight, it's going to consume my life for a while. I'm going to be angry and obsessed and probably not great company. Okay. But I don't want to do it alone. Her heart kicked. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you here. Not just as someone who visits my mother, not just as a friend, as someone who's in this with me. Ethan, I know it's a lot. I know we haven't known each other that long, but I can't shake this feeling that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. She looked at him, at the exhaustion and determination and something else, something that looked like hope. I'm scared, she said. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of getting hurt. I know, but I'm scared too. Of what? Of losing you before I ever really had you. That broke something in her. One condition, she said, anything. We do this together, not you throwing money at problems while I watch from the sidelines. Equal partners. Deal. And you let me help, really help, not just as a witness, as someone who knows what it's like to be on the other side of people like you. He flinched. People like me. You know what I mean? I do, and you're right. He took her hand. Equal partners. She squeezed back. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. He smiled. Actually, smiled, for the first time in weeks. We're going to destroy them, he said. I know. And she believed it, because for the first time in her life, Claire Dawson wasn't fighting alone. The legal team met every Wednesday in a conference room that smelled like coffee and desperation. Claire started attending after that conversation in Ethan's office. She'd sit at the end of the table with a notebook, writing down everything she remembered, everything she'd witnessed. The lawyers treated her like a liability at first. Ms. Dawson, one of them said during the second meeting, a man named Richard with silver hair and a voice like gravel. You need to understand that your testimony will be picked apart. Defense attorneys will question your motives, your memory, your credibility. I know. They'll suggest you were fired for cause, that you're bitter, that you're only doing this for money. I don't care. You should care. This will get ugly. Claire looked at him. It already is ugly. It was ugly when I watched Margaret Whitmore cry herself to sleep every night because she thought her son abandoned her. It was ugly when I saw staff members ignore call buttons for hours. It was ugly when I found out they were billing families for services that never existed. So yeah, it's going to get uglier, but I'm not backing down. Richard studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Good. After that, they listened. Claire told them about the medication schedules that were constantly wrong, about the patient who developed bed sores because no one turned her, about the CNA who got fired for reporting safety violations, about the night a resident wandered out of the building and was found 3 blocks away in her nightgown. The lawyers wrote everything down. Ethan sat across from her through all of it, his expression getting darker with each story. After one particularly brutal session, he followed her out to the elevator. I need a drink, he said. It's 2 in the afternoon. I don't care. They ended up at a bar in Tribeca that was trying too hard to look casual. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, a bartender with a handlebar mustache who took 10 minutes to make an old-fashioned. Ethan ordered whiskey. Claire got a beer. I keep thinking about all the time I wasted, he said. All those months I could have been there. Should have been there. You can't do this to yourself. Why not? It's true. You didn't know. I should have. How? They were professionals. They had credentials and licenses and fancy letterheads. You had no reason not to trust them. Except my gut, which told me something was wrong, and I ignored it. Claire took a drink. What did your gut say? That the place felt off, too clean, too quiet, too many locked doors. He stared at his glass. But they had answers for everything. Security measures, privacy concerns, best practices, and I wanted to believe them because the alternative was admitting that I'd put my mother somewhere terrible. So you're human. I'm a coward. You're here now, fighting. That's not cowardice. He finally looked at her. Do you ever regret it, filing that complaint? Every day? That surprised him. Why? Because it cost me my job. Because it put a target on my back. Because for 19 months I thought nothing would come of it and I destroyed my life for nothing. She paused. But I'd do it again. Even knowing what it cost? Especially knowing what it cost. He reached across the table, took her hand. His palm was warm. I don't deserve you, he said. That's probably true. He laughed. Actually laughed. It broke some of the tension. You're supposed to disagree. Why? You're rich, you're emotionally unavailable, and you have terrible taste in bars. This bar's nice. This bar charges $18 for a beer. It's craft. It's a scam. He was grinning now. You're the worst. I know. They stayed until the bar filled up with after-work crowds. Ethan's phone kept buzzing, work emails, updates from the legal team. A text from Sophie asking when he'd be home. You should go, Claire said. I don't want to. Sophie needs you. She has a nanny. That's not the same. He knew she was right. He paid the tab, left a tip that probably covered the bartender's rent, and walked her to the subway. Thank you, he said. For today, for all of this. I haven't done anything. You're here. That's everything. She wanted to kiss him. The thought came out of nowhere and hit her like a truck. She wanted to stand on her toes and press her mouth to his and see what happened. Instead, she said, See you Wednesday. Wednesday, he agreed. She took the train home and tried not to think about how badly she wanted something she couldn't have. The depositions started in May. Claire went first. She sat in a room with 2 lawyers, a court reporter, and a camera and told her story. Start to finish, every detail she could remember. The defense attorney was exactly what she expected. Mid-50s, expensive suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Dawson, he said, you were fired from St. Catherine's, correct? Yes. Why? They said I violated professional boundaries. Did you? No. But they terminated your employment. Yes. So either you did violate boundaries or they were retaliating against you. Which is it? Retaliation. That's convenient? That's the truth. He flipped through his notes. You filed a complaint with the Department of Health 2 days before you were fired. Yes. That's quite a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. It's cause and effect. Or it's an employee who knew she was about to be fired trying to get ahead of the story. Claire's jaw clenched. I was fired because I reported abuse. You say abuse. St. Catherine's says standard care protocols. Standard care protocols don't include sedating patients into compliance. Can you prove that happened? I saw it happen. Did you document it? I tried. They confiscated my notes. How convenient. Ethan's lawyer, a woman named Jennifer, who looked like she could kill you with her briefcase, leaned forward. Are you accusing my witness of lying? I'm establishing credibility. You're badgering. I'm doing my job. It went on like that for 4 hours. By the end, Claire's head was pounding and her hands were shaking. Jennifer walked her out. You did great, she said. I feel like I got run over. That's normal. He's trying to rattle you. It worked. It didn't. You held your ground. That's what matters. Claire didn't feel like she'd held anything. She felt like she'd been torn apart and badly reassembled. Ethan was waiting in the lobby. He took one look at her and said, Let's get out of here. They walked. No destination. Just walked through the city until Claire's heart stopped racing. That was brutal, she said finally. I know. They're going to shred me on the stand. They're going to try. But you're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. You are. You went up against a system that's designed to protect itself, and you didn't back down. That's strength. She wanted to believe him. They ended up at the Brooklyn Bridge, tourists everywhere taking selfies and blocking the walkway. But there was something comforting about being surrounded by people who had no idea what she'd just been through. Margaret's deposition is next week, Ethan said. Is she ready? She says she is, but I'm worried it'll be too much for her. She's tougher than you think. I know, but she's still my mother. I want to protect her. You can't protect her from this. She needs to do it. He looked at her. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of watching people get hurt. Margaret's deposition was worse than Claire's. Not because Margaret wasn't strong, but because watching her relive those 18 months at St. Catherine's was like watching someone bleed out in slow motion. She told them about the night she woke up disoriented and alone, about asking for Ethan and being told he didn't want to see her, about the medication that made her foggy and confused, about the day she tried to call him and a nurse took the phone away, saying outside calls weren't allowed. The defense attorney asked if she was sure those things happened. Given your condition, he said delicately, is it possible you're misremembering? Margaret looked him dead in the eye. I have Alzheimer's. I'm not stupid. Claire, watching from the corner, wanted to applaud. Of course not, the attorney said, but memory issues are a hallmark of your diagnosis. My short-term memory is affected. My long-term memory is fine, and I remember every single day in that place because it was the worst year and a half of my life. You're quite lucid now. Because I'm getting proper care, because I'm not being drugged into submission, because my son found me a facility that actually treats me like a human being. But at the time, I was exactly as lucid as I am now. They just didn't want me to be. The attorney tried a different angle. Mrs. Whitmore, you're very close with Ms. Dawson, correct? Yes. And she's the one who encouraged you to participate in this lawsuit. She did no such thing. I volunteered the moment I found out what they'd done. But she was the one who told you about the investigation. Yes. After agreeing with your son not to tell you. Margaret's expression hardened. She told me the truth. Something your clients failed to do for 18 months. So you're angry. Of course I'm angry. They stole time from me. Time with my son. Time I can't get back. They lied to him. They lied to me. They took my money and gave me nothing but pain. Yes, I'm angry. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what they did. When it was over, Margaret looked exhausted but triumphant. Ethan hugged her for a long time. You were amazing, he said. I know. She pulled back, looked at Claire. How did I do? You destroyed him. Good. They took Margaret back to Sunrise Manor. She fell asleep in the car, head against the window, mouth slightly open. She's going to feel this tomorrow, Ethan said quietly. Probably. I hate that she had to do that. She wanted to. I know, but still. They carried her to her room, got her settled. A nurse promised to check on her every hour. Outside, Ethan leaned against his car and closed his eyes. I can't do this anymore, he said. Claire's heart stopped. What? This, all of it. The depositions, the lawyers, reliving it over and over. Ethan, I know we have to. I know it matters. But I'm so tired. She understood that. She was tired too. Want to do something completely unrelated to lawsuits? She asked. He opened his eyes. Like what? I don't know. Something normal. Normal, he repeated like it was a foreign concept. Yeah, like normal people on a normal day doing a normal thing. I don't remember what that's like. Me neither. We'll figure it out. They ended up at Coney Island. It was a Tuesday night in May, and the boardwalk was half empty. They bought hot dogs from Nathan's and ate them sitting on a bench facing the ocean. This is definitely not my normal, Ethan said. What's your normal? Conference calls and board meetings? That sounds awful. It is. Then why do you do it? Because someone has to run the company. Delegate. I do. Delegate more. He smiled. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is. It's not. I have investors, employees, responsibilities, and a daughter who needs you present, not just physically there. That landed. He set down his hot dog. You think I'm not present with Sophie? I think you're trying, but I also think you're drowning, and you don't know how to ask for help. I'm asking you. For help with a lawsuit, not with your life. What's the difference? Everything. They sat in silence, watching the waves. What do you want me to do? He asked finally. I don't know. Take a day off. Go to one of Sophie's school events. Have dinner with her without checking your phone every 5 minutes. I don't... You do. I've seen it. Every time we eat together, you're half there and half somewhere else. That's not fair. It's true. He looked at her. Are we fighting? I don't know. Are we? It feels like we are. Good. Maybe that means we're real. He blinked. What? This. Us. Whatever we are. Maybe it means something if we can fight without falling apart. We're not falling apart. No? No. He reached over, took her hand. I'm sorry. You're right about all of it. I'm not present. I'm not delegating. I'm trying to control everything, and I'm failing at all of it. You're not failing. I'm barely keeping my head above water. Then let me help, really help, not just with the lawsuit, with everything. How? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. He squeezed her hand. Okay. They stayed until the sun set. Then they rode the cyclone, even though it was freezing and probably a terrible idea. Claire screamed the whole time. Ethan laughed so hard he cried. Afterward, waiting for the train, he kissed her, just like that. No warning. He cupped her face in his hands and pressed his mouth to hers, and everything else disappeared. When he pulled back, she was breathless. What was that? She asked. Something I should have done weeks ago. Oh. Good O or bad O? I'm still deciding. He grinned. Take your time. But she already knew. The trial started in September. By then, the case had grown beyond anything Claire had imagined. 37 families joined the lawsuit. The criminal charges included fraud, elder abuse, and racketeering. St. Catherine's entire board of directors had resigned. The facility itself had been seized by the state. Claire sat in the courtroom every day. So did Ethan and Margaret. So did dozens of other families who'd been lied to and stolen from. The prosecution's case was devastating. They brought in former employees who testified about being pressured to cut corners, accountants who traced the money, medical experts who explained how overprescribing sedatives constituted abuse, and they brought in patients, or former patients, now living in better facilities, who told stories that made the jury cry. The defense tried to paint it as a few bad actors, rogue employees, systematic failures that management hadn't known about. Nobody bought it. The documents were too clear, the pattern too consistent, the cover-up too thorough. When Claire took the stand, she was ready. The defense attorney tried the same tactics he'd used in the deposition, questioned her credibility, suggested she was bitter. She didn't flinch. You're asking if I'm bitter, she said at one point. Yes, I'm bitter that I lost a job I needed because I tried to do the right thing. I'm bitter that patients suffered while administrators got rich. I'm bitter that it took 19 months for anyone to listen. But I'm not lying, and the evidence proves that. When Margaret testified, the courtroom went silent. She spoke clearly, calmly, described her time at St. Catherine's like she was narrating a documentary. No emotion, just facts. But when the prosecutor asked how it felt to learn her son had been trying to reach her the whole time, her voice broke. It felt like finding out I'd been buried alive, she said, and everyone I loved thought I was already dead. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted, people crying, hugging, cheering. Claire sat frozen in her seat. It was over. Actually over. Ethan found her in the hallway afterward. He looked stunned. We won, he said. We won. I can't believe it. Believe it. He pulled her into a hug. She buried her face in his shoulder and finally let herself cry. Margaret was surrounded by reporters. She handled them like a pro, answering questions with grace and steel. This isn't just about money, she told a camera. This is about making sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else. Later, after the reporters dispersed and the lawyers congratulated each other and the families started to leave, the three of them stood on the courthouse steps. What now? Margaret asked. Now we make sure this actually changes things, Ethan said. How? I have some ideas. Claire looked at him. What kind of ideas? The kind that involve you. Me? You, me. My mother. Anyone who wants to be part of it. Part of what? I'll explain later. Right now, I just want to celebrate. They went to dinner, not somewhere fancy. Margaret chose a pizza place in Little Italy that she'd been going to since the 60s. They ate too much, drank too much wine, laughed until their sides hurt, and for the first time in months, Claire felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. On the way home, Ethan's phone rang. He answered, listened, went pale. "What?" Claire asked. He hung up. That was Jennifer. The sentencing recommendations came through. And? Dr. Morrison is looking at 15 years, the administrator 20, the others 5 to 10 each. Margaret made a small sound. "They're going to prison," Ethan said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "They deserve worse," Margaret said quietly. Nobody argued. They dropped Margaret off first. She hugged them both, told them she was proud, went inside. Ethan drove Claire home, parked outside her building, but didn't turn off the car. "I meant what I said," he told her, "about having ideas. I know. I want to start a foundation for elder care advocacy, oversight, reform, all of it. That's ambitious. I know, but I can't just walk away, not after this. I wouldn't expect you to. I want you involved, Ethan, not as a volunteer, as a partner. Help me build this. I don't know anything about running a foundation. You know what matters, you know what patients need, what families need. That's more important than any MBA." She looked at him, at the hope and determination in his eyes. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I need time." "Take all the time you need." He kissed her good night. She went upstairs, made tea, sat by the window. Her life had changed so completely in the past year she barely recognized it. A year ago, she was invisible, working herself to exhaustion for barely enough to survive. Alone. Forgotten. Now she was sitting in an apartment that suddenly felt too small, thinking about starting a foundation with a man who'd somehow become the most important person in her life. It was terrifying. It was also the first time in her life she'd felt like she mattered. Her phone buzzed. "Ethan, whatever you decide, I'm with you." She smiled. "Claire." "I know." And she did. Claire gave her notice at the Bluebird on a cold morning in October. Donnie didn't look up from the griddle. "About time." "You're not surprised?" "You've been different for months, lighter, like you finally figured out you deserve better than this place." "The Bluebird's not that bad." "It's exactly that bad. But it was what you needed when you needed it." He flipped a pancake. "Where you going?" "I'm not sure yet." "But you're going somewhere." "Yeah." Marcus hugged her so tight she couldn't breathe. "I'm going to miss you." "I'll visit." "No, you won't. You'll be too busy being important." "I'm not going to be important. You already are. You just didn't know it yet." She worked her last 2 weeks in a daze. Everything felt surreal, like she was watching her own life from the outside. On her final shift, the regulars threw her a party. Table 2, the guy with the 20 who'd called her sweetheart, brought a cake. The college kids from Pratt made her a card. Even the businessman who'd been coming in for 4 years and never said more than his order told her good luck. She cried in the bathroom during her break. When she left that night, Donnie was waiting by the door. "You're going to do great things," he said. "You don't know that." "I do, because you care. And people who care always find a way." She hugged him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a job when I needed one. For not asking questions, for letting me exist here." "You didn't just exist, kid. You mattered." She walked out of the Bluebird for the last time and didn't look back. The foundation launched in November. They called it the Whitmore Initiative for Elder Care Advocacy. Margaret hated the name. "It sounds corporate," she said. "It is corporate," Ethan pointed out. "Then change it." "To what?" "Something that means something." They settled on the Margaret Claire Foundation after a week of arguing. Margaret and Claire both protested. Ethan overruled them. "It's named after the 2 people who started this," he said. "That's final." The foundation's office was in Brooklyn, 3 blocks from Sunrise Manor. Not a glass tower, not a fancy address, just a renovated brownstone with good light and enough space for the 6 people they'd hired. Claire's title was Director of Patient Advocacy. She had no idea what that meant at first. "It means you do what you've always done," Ethan explained. "You listen. You care. You fight for people who can't fight for themselves." "That's not a job description." "It is now." Her first day, she sat at a desk that was bigger than her entire kitchen and stared at a computer she didn't know how to use. A woman named Andrea, who Ethan had hired as operations manager, found her 20 minutes later. "You okay?" Andrea asked. "I have no idea what I'm doing." "Good. That means you're in the right place." "That doesn't make sense." "It will." Andrea was right. Within a week, Claire found her rhythm. She spent mornings meeting with families who'd been affected by neglect or abuse, afternoons drafting policy recommendations, evenings reviewing legislation with lawyers who actually listened to what she had to say. It was exhausting. It was also the most alive she'd ever felt. Margaret came to the office every Tuesday. She'd set up camp in the conference room and hold what she called strategy sessions with anyone who'd listen. "We need to mandate surprise inspections," she said during one meeting. "That's already in the proposal," Andrea said. "Then we need to make them more frequent, monthly, not quarterly." "That's a resource issue." "Then we get more resources." "From where?" "I don't know. That's Ethan's problem." Ethan, sitting at the head of the table, smiled. "Thanks, Mom." "You're welcome." They worked on legislation, partnered with advocacy groups, testified at state hearings, launched a hotline for people to report abuse. The hotline got 300 calls in the first week. Claire listened to every single one. A daughter whose mother had been over-medicated until she stopped recognizing her own children. A son who'd been banned from visiting because he asked too many questions. A woman who'd found bruises on her father's arms and been told he was clumsy. Each story broke her heart. Each story made her more determined. "We can't save everyone," Ethan said one night after she'd stayed late listening to voicemails. "I know. But you're trying anyway. What else am I supposed to do?" He didn't have an answer for that. In December, Sophie's school had a winter concert. Claire went because Ethan asked. She sat in the back of the auditorium with Margaret, watching 7-year-olds sing off-key versions of holiday songs. Sophie spotted them halfway through. Her face lit up. She waved so enthusiastically she nearly fell off the riser. "She's adorable," Margaret whispered. "She really is." After the concert, Sophie ran over and threw her arms around Claire. "You came!" "Of course I came." "Did you see me?" "I was in the front row." "I saw you. You were great." "I messed up the words in the second song." "I didn't notice." "Really? Really?" Sophie beamed. Then she turned to Ethan. "Can Claire come to dinner?" "If she wants to." Sophie looked at Claire with eyes that were impossible to say no to. "Please?" "Okay." They went to a diner in Park Slope. Not the Thai place, not anywhere fancy, just a regular diner where they didn't care if a 7-year-old ordered pancakes for dinner. Sophie talked nonstop. About school, about her friend Mia who'd moved to New Jersey, about the hamster she wanted but Ethan wouldn't let her have. "Hamsters are a lot of responsibility," Ethan said. "I'm responsible." "You left your backpack at school 3 times last week." "That's different." "How?" "Because backpacks aren't alive." Margaret laughed so hard she choked on her water. After dinner, Ethan drove them all home. He dropped Margaret off first, then headed toward Claire's apartment. Sophie was asleep in the back seat. "She likes you," Ethan said quietly. "I like her too. She asked me last week if you were going to be her mom." Claire's heart stopped. "What did you tell her?" "That I didn't know, but that I hoped so." She looked at him. "Ethan, I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring this out, but I need you to know that this isn't casual for me. You're not casual for me. You're not casual for me either." "Good." They sat in silence for a moment. "I'm scared," she said. "Of what?" "Of messing this up, of not being enough, of Sophie getting attached and me letting her down." "You won't." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." "How?" "Because you've never let anyone down in your life. You show up. You care. You fight. That's who you are." She wanted to believe him. "What if I'm not ready?" she asked. "Then we wait until you are." "What if I'm never ready?" "Then we figure it out together." He pulled up in front of her building. She didn't get out. "I love you," he said. She'd known it was coming, had felt it in the way he looked at her, the way he listened, the way he made space for her in his life without asking for anything in return. But hearing it was different. "I love you too," she said. He smiled, really smiled. The kind of smile that made her forget every reason she'd ever had to protect herself. Yeah? Yeah. He kissed her, soft and slow and full of promise. When she finally went inside, she felt like she was floating. The legislation passed in March. It wasn't everything they'd wanted. They'd had to compromise, water down some provisions, accept amendments that weakened protections. But it was something. Mandatory monthly inspections, stricter licensing requirements, criminal penalties for administrators who knowingly allowed abuse, a state registry of facilities with violations. Margaret cried when the governor signed it. "We did it," she said. "You did it," Claire corrected. "We did it together." They held a press conference on the steps of the state capitol. Margaret spoke first, clear and strong and unflinching. "This law won't bring back the time that was stolen from me and my son," she said. "It won't erase the trauma of those 18 months, but it will protect other families, other mothers and sons and daughters, and that's what matters." The reporters asked questions about the lawsuit, about Street, Catherine's, about what came next. Ethan fielded most of them, but when someone asked Claire why she'd kept fighting after being fired, she answered, "Because nobody else would," she said simply. The clip went viral. By the next morning, Claire's phone was flooded with messages, interview requests, speaking invitations, people thanking her for her courage. She ignored most of them, but one message stood out. It was from a woman named Dr. Linda Hayes, director of a nursing home in Queens. "I saw your interview," the message read. "I've been trying to implement better oversight at my facility for years. Would you be willing to consult?" Claire showed it to Ethan. "You should do it," he said. "I don't know anything about consulting. You know what good care looks like. That's all you need." She met with Dr. Hayes the following week. The facility was clean, well-staffed. The residents looked happy. But Dr. Hayes wanted to do better. "I don't want to be good enough," she said. "I want to be the standard." Claire spent 3 days there, talking to staff, observing care routines, meeting with residents and families. Then she wrote a 20-page report with recommendations. Dr. Hayes implemented every single one. Within 2 months, word spread. Other facilities started calling. By summer, Claire was consulting for 12 different nursing homes across 3 states. The foundation hired 2 more people just to handle the requests. "This is getting out of control," Claire said during a staff meeting. "This is called success," Andrea corrected. "It doesn't feel like success. It feels like chaos." "Same thing," Ethan laughed. "She's not wrong." In August, Sophie started 2nd grade. Claire went with Ethan to drop her off on the first day. Sophie was nervous, clutching her new backpack, chewing her bottom lip. "What if nobody likes me?" she asked. "Everyone will like you," Ethan said. "You have to say that. You're my dad." "He's right, though," Claire said. "You're pretty likable." "You have to say that, too. You're—" Sophie paused. "What are you?" Claire looked at Ethan. He looked back. "What do you want her to be?" he asked Sophie. Sophie thought about it. "Family." Claire's eyes burned. "Yeah, I'm family." Sophie smiled. "Okay, then you have to say nice things." They walked her to her classroom. She hugged them both, took a deep breath, and went inside. Ethan grabbed Claire's hand as they walked back to the car. "She called you family," he said. "I heard. How do you feel about that?" "Terrified." "Good terrified or bad terrified?" "I'm not sure there's a difference." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "Move in with us," he said. She blinked. "What?" "Move in. You're at the apartment half the time anyway. Sophie loves you. I love you. We have space. It makes sense." "Ethan, I know it's a big step, but I'm ready. And I think you are too. My lease isn't up until January, so we'll wait until January. What if it doesn't work? What if it does?" She looked at him, at the hope in his eyes, the certainty. "Okay," she said. "Okay?" "Yeah, okay." He kissed her right there on the sidewalk in front of Sophie's school while parents streamed past with their kids. Claire moved in on New Year's Day. She didn't have much. Most of her furniture was secondhand garbage she was happy to leave behind. She packed her clothes, her books, a few photos, and that was it. Ethan's apartment was in Brooklyn Heights. 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows. A kitchen bigger than her old studio. Sophie helped her unpack. "This is your room," she announced, opening a door to reveal a space that was bigger than anywhere Claire had ever lived. "I thought I'd be staying in Ethan's room," Claire said. Sophie wrinkled her nose. You can stay there sometimes, but you need your own space. Dad said so." Ethan appeared in the doorway. "I said you should have your own space, not that you can't stay with me." "Semantics," Sophie said. "Where did you learn that word?" "School." He looked at Claire. "Second grade is getting advanced." "Apparently." They spent the day making the apartment feel like home, or trying to. Claire kept expecting someone to tell her she didn't belong, that this was all a mistake. But nobody did. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Claire and Ethan sat on the couch with glasses of wine. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so." "You think so?" "This is a lot. The apartment, Sophie, you, all of it." "Too much?" "No, just different." "Different good." She smiled. "Different good." He pulled her close. She rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me. When I was invisible." "You were never invisible." "I was, but you looked anyway." He kissed the top of her head. "Best decision I ever made." The foundation grew. By the end of the year, they'd helped pass legislation in 4 states, shut down 3 abusive facilities, reunited dozens of families who'd been deliberately separated. Margaret became the face of the organization. She did interviews, gave speeches, testified before Congress. "I'm too old for this," she complained after a particularly brutal day of back-to-back meetings. "You love it," Claire said. "I do, but I'm still too old." "You're 73, that's not old. Tell that to my knees." They were sitting in Margaret's room at Sunrise Manor. The old woman looked tired but happy. "I've been thinking," Margaret said. "About?" "Retiring." Claire sat up. "What? No." "Hear me out. I'm not saying I'll stop advocating, but maybe it's time to step back. Let younger people take the lead." "You are the lead. I'm a figurehead. You're the one doing the real work." "That's not true." "It is. And that's okay. This was always supposed to be bigger than me." She paused. "I want to spend more time with Sophie, with Ethan, with you. I don't want to spend my remaining years in conference rooms." Claire understood that. She did. "Okay," she said, "but you're not retiring. You're transitioning. What's the difference?" "Retiring means you're done. Transitioning means you're shifting focus. You'll still be involved, just differently." Margaret smiled. "I like that." They announced it at the Foundation's annual gala in April. Margaret gave a speech that made everyone cry, talked about her journey from victim to advocate, about the people who'd helped her along the way. When she mentioned Claire, the room erupted in applause. Claire wanted to disappear. After the speech, Ethan found her hiding in a hallway. "You okay?" "I hate being the center of attention." "Too bad. You are." "I didn't ask for this." "I know. That's what makes you perfect for it." She leaned against him. "When does this get easier?" "Never, but you get used to it." "That's not encouraging. It's honest." She laughed despite herself. They went back to the ballroom, danced, talked to donors, pretended to enjoy small talk with people who wanted to be associated with success. But later, back at the apartment, Sophie asleep in her room and Margaret settled in the guest room, Claire finally breathed. "We did it," she said. "Did what?" "Made something that matters." Ethan pulled her close. "We did. I keep waiting for it to fall apart. It's not going to." "You don't know that." "I know you, and I know you'll fight to keep it standing." He was right. In June, Sophie asked if she could call Claire Mom. They were at the park. Sophie had been quiet all afternoon, which was unusual. "What's wrong?" Claire asked. "Nothing. Can I ask you something?" "Always." "At school, everyone talks about their moms, and I tell them my mom died, but then I feel bad because I have you, and you're kind of like a mom, but I don't know if I'm allowed to call you that." Claire's throat closed. "You can call me whatever you want," she said. "Really? Really? What if Dad gets mad?" "He won't." What if you get mad? I could never be mad at you. Sophie thought about it. Can I try it out? Sure. Okay, Mom? The word hit Claire like a freight train. Yeah? Can we get ice cream? Claire laughed through tears. Yeah, we can get ice cream. That night she told Ethan. He cried. Actually cried. She called you Mom, he said. She did. How do you feel about that? Terrified. And happy. And like I'm going to mess this up. You're not. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest. I never thought I'd have this, she said. Have what? A family. People who see me, who love me. You deserve all of it. I'm starting to believe that. Good. They stood there in their kitchen, holding each other, and Claire felt something she'd never felt before. Peace. The Foundation's 3rd anniversary fell on a Thursday. They didn't do anything special, just a small gathering at the office, cake from the bakery down the street, speeches that were more inside jokes than substance. Margaret was there. So was Andrea and the rest of the staff. Sophie came after school, still in her uniform. 3 years, Margaret said, raising a glass of sparkling cider. 3 years of fighting, of winning, of making sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else. Hear, hear, Andrea said. They toasted, ate cake, told stories about the early days when they were 6 people in a brownstone trying to change the world. Remember when we thought we'd shut down one facility and call it a win? Andrea said. And now we've helped close 18, Claire added. And counting, Ethan said. Sophie tugged on Claire's sleeve. Mom? Claire's heart still skipped every time she heard that word. Yeah? Can we go home soon? I have homework. In a little bit. Okay. Sophie wandered off to steal more frosting. Ethan slid his arm around Claire's waist. You good? Yeah, I'm good. Happy? Yeah. Liar. She smiled. I'm terrified I'm going to wake up and this will all be gone. It won't be. You don't know that. I know you, and I know you'll hold on to this with everything you have. She would. She knew she would. Because this was hers. This family. This work. This life she'd never imagined possible. On the way home, Sophie fell asleep in the car. Ethan carried her inside. Claire followed, stopping to check the mail. There was a letter from the governor's office. She opened it in the elevator. It was an invitation to a ceremony recognizing advocates who'd made significant contributions to eldercare reform. Margaret's name was on it. So was Claire's. What is it? Ethan asked. She showed him. You're getting an award. Apparently. That's amazing. It's weird. It's deserved. She folded the letter, slipped it back in the envelope. I don't want an award. I just want people to be safe. I know. But sometimes you get both. They put Sophie to bed. She barely stirred when they tucked her in. After, they sat on the couch with tea. The apartment was quiet, city lights flickering through the windows. Do you ever think about that day at the diner? Ethan asked. Which day? The day I brought my mother in, when you confronted me. I was so angry. You had every right to be. I thought you were the villain. I kind of was. No, you were just lost. I was both. She leaned against him. We've come a long way. We have. Think we can keep going? I know we can. She believed him because they'd already done the impossible. They'd torn down a corrupt system, built something better, created a family out of pain and loss and determination. If they could do that, they could do anything. The award ceremony was in September. Margaret wore a blue dress. Claire wore something Ethan had bought her that she insisted was too expensive. You look beautiful, he said. I look uncomfortable. That too. Sophie was their date. She sat between them in the auditorium, swinging her legs. When they called Margaret's name, the room stood. The old woman walked to the stage slowly but steadily, took the award, gave a speech that was funny and moving and quintessentially Margaret. I spent 18 months invisible, she said. Forgotten. Written off. And then a waitress from Brooklyn showed up and refused to let me disappear. This award isn't for me. It's for her. And for everyone like her who shows up when nobody else will. She looked directly at Claire. Claire was crying. When they called her name, she almost didn't go up. Ethan nudged her. Go. I can't. You can. She walked to the stage on shaking legs, took the award, looked out at the crowd. All she could see was the Bluebird Diner, the nursing home, the years of being invisible. I'm not special, she said. Shh. I just cared when it mattered. That's all any of us can do. Care, show up, fight for people who can't fight for themselves. And if we all do that, maybe we can change things. The room erupted. After, they went to dinner. The four of them. Margaret, Ethan, Claire, and Sophie. They went to the diner in Park Slope, the one where Claire and Ethan had their first real conversation. It felt right. Coming full circle. Sophie ordered pancakes. Margaret got soup. Ethan had a burger. Claire got pad thai, even though this wasn't a Thai place. That's not on the menu, the waiter said. I know, but I had to try. He brought her a salad instead. They laughed, talked, made plans for the weekend, and Claire realized something. This was it. This was the life she'd been fighting for without knowing it. Not perfect, not easy, but hers. Walking back to the car, Sophie grabbed her hand. Mom? Yeah? I'm glad you came to the diner that day. Me too, baby. Do you think Grandma is glad too? I know she is. Margaret, walking ahead with Ethan, turned back. I heard that, and yes, best thing that ever happened to me. That night, after Sophie was asleep and Margaret had gone home and the apartment was quiet, Claire stood at the window looking out at Brooklyn. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. How different everything is. Good different? Yeah, good different. Any regrets? She thought about it, about the Bluebird, about the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, about the years of being invisible. No, she said. No regrets. Not even the hard parts? Especially not the hard parts. They led me here. He kissed her temple. I love you. I love you too. They stood there for a while, watching the city, and Claire thought about the shy waitress who'd walked through life unnoticed, who'd cared for a forgotten old woman because nobody else would, who'd lost her job and filed a complaint and never stopped fighting. That woman had changed everything, not because she was special, but because she'd shown up. And that, Claire realized, was enough. It had always been enough. She turned in Ethan's arms, kissed him, and let herself believe in the life they'd built together. A life that started in a tired diner in Brooklyn, a life that proved showing up matters, a life that was finally, impossibly, hers,